The Shark Deck.
I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Hey, remember that whole thing with Pete Davidson and the ferry? And Pete suggested that they were stoned when they bought the ferry. And I pointed out that's not how it works. It's not like you're in the East Village and you're walking down the street and somebody goes, hey, want to buy a ferry? And you whip out $200,000 cash and suddenly you own a ferry because you're stoned. That's not how it works. Well, Colin Jost has cleaned this up. On Instagram, Colin wrote, is it worse that I was actually stone cold sober when we bought the ferry? Joe suggests that the ferry could be up and running by 2025, adding, we're excited to prove the non-believers wrong. You're going to be begging to get on this ferry in 2 years. Mark my words. Told you yesterday about Jocelyn Chia. The Malaysians are trying to sick Interpol on her. She said her joke had been taken out of context when consumed on social media. I've performed this routine hundreds of times and even did a shorter version of it in Singapore. It always cracks the audience up. I wouldn't have used it again if it didn't work. Chia pointed out that roasting or grilling the audience is part of the comedy club culture in New York. That's not necessarily the case in Asian countries where routines are more subdued. Chia points out that American comics in the past have used sensitive topics, including September 11th, as fodder for their jokes. I can think of one Gilbert Gottfried joke. She said, Americans can appreciate humor that is harsher, edgier, and more in your face as compared to in Asia, where the stand-up comedy scene is still in its early days. You won't find a lot of edgy comedy in Asia. She told the BBC, I just wish I could have seen the face of the Interpol officer who received this request. Honestly, if Interpol does do something about this request and things escalate, can you imagine how famous it's going to make me? Meanwhile, from says.com, Singaporean stand-up comedian Kumar has apologized to Malaysians in response to Jocelyn Chia's controversial routine. Kumar, described as a popular comedian, actor, and TV host, released a video on his socials saying, I would like to sincerely apologize on behalf of Jocelyn Chia's stand-up comedy show. I really don't think people should use stand-up comedy as a tool to vent out your anger and hatred. Please learn from this. For Malaysia, we need you for fun, food, and leisure, and for some of us, work. Jocelyn Chia, if you're watching this, I really think you should seek help because you really have some issues. Thank you. Maybe all aspiring comedians need to go to Adam Corolla and Jay Leno's new comedy fantasy camp. They've partnered with the producers of Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp to offer Comedy Fantasy Camp, a 4-day event. Hollywood, this October. Attendees of all levels, from beginners to advanced, will learn techniques, tips, and lessons on all different types and aspects of comedy. The camp is primarily geared towards adults, but is open to all ages. Who's going to be there? Jay Leno, Adam Corolla, Alonzo Bowden, Brad Williams, some writers from Friends, King of Queens, The Goldbergs, a showrunner from one of Tim Allen's shows, and maybe they should invite the ChatGPT. Over the 4 days, attendees will develop their own stand-up routines and perform them on stage, as well as participate in mentoring sessions. There'll be a live comedy show at the Hollywood Improv featuring all the campers who can pitch their own ideas to a panel of experienced producers and writers, providing a real-world industry experience. Jay Leno said, I look forward to working with this year's class of Comedy Fantasy Camp attendees in Los Angeles this coming October. It will be a gas. And now, let me leave a pregnant pause because I have to totally change my tone of voice and lose this slightly bemused lilt read that I usually use. From the New York Times, 9 women have accused Bill Cosby of sexual assault in the Nevada lawsuit on Wednesday. That comes less than 2 months after Nevada changed its statute of limitations for civil cases. The women said in the lawsuit that the assaults took place in Nevada between 1979 and 1992, some in Cosby's hotel suite in Las Vegas. They said that Cosby had drugged or attempted to drug each of them before the assaults. Cosby's spokesperson Andrew Wyatt told Variety in a statement, it's interesting that these look-back widows are formulating only in those states where many of Mr. Cosby's alleged accusers reside. It makes all Americans ask the question, who's funding these alleged accusers and who's funding these lawmakers? More than 60 women have publicly accused Bill Cosby of sexual misconduct.
Lyle Hall, a cantankerous real estate attorney, has lost the ability to walk after a deadly car crash. But he has also gained something, the ability to read people's thoughts. And not just the living. When a girl's voice calls to him from inside the abandoned old Vic, Lyle is given hope of regaining the use of his legs. But it quickly turns to fear. This ghostly girl says Lyle's daughter, a rookie detective, will die in 4 days. Can he save her? Find out on the first season of Ghosthampton, a comedy horror podcast.
So it's a trivia, and they asked a question about Bob's Burgers, which was amusing to me. It was asking who voices Bob Belcher. And, I could have argued and said, well, nobody voices Bob Belcher because there's no such thing as Bob's Burgers. Again, for new listeners, I understand that you've seen the artwork. I understand that Joe Buck would read promos for it. But have you ever actually seen Bob's Burgers? The answer is no. Have you ever met anyone who has seen Bob's Burgers? The answer is also no. But I digress. So in theory, who voices Bob Belcher? And I had no idea, and my buddy Glenn was there, and he added, and it doesn't exist. Exactly. So we got that one wrong. We had a nice night of trivia. I'm heading somewhere with this. We were missing the fourth guy on our team. He couldn't come. Now, he's usually in charge of the food. Usually we get pizza or sandwiches or something, but we didn't have anything, and I didn't have dinner, and I might have had an extra beverage last night. So when I woke up this morning, when you've had a couple non-coffee beverages and you need to take the edge off a little bit, so I hit the National Donuts chain. Not only did I get a large iced coffee with caramel and milk, I got myself not one, 2 donuts. And then I went for a run, so it's kind of a net zero, but sometimes you need to mop up the beverages. And this is my way of getting into buymeacoffee.com/daily comedy news. If you'd like to support the show and you're like, wow, poor Johnny Mac, he's probably a little hungry and, maybe has a slight headache and could use some caffeine and some sugar, and you'd like to help me out, especially after losing trivia because of a Bob's Burgers question, buymeacoffee.com/daily comedy news. I teased this next story yesterday. It's going to be a lot of me reading. As I went into it, I thought it was heading somewhere, and by the end of it, I just had an icky feeling, so buckle your seatbelts. Distractify had the headline, Why Do People Hate Amy Schumer? Her Netflix special Emergency Contact is the controversial feminist comedian's 5th stand-up special. So it got into some of the reasons someone might dislike Amy Schumer, and then I got to this, quote, other people hate Amy because of her self-admitted sexual assault, unquote. And I was like, wait, what? Distractify referred to the 2014 Gloria Awards. And they write, in her speech about confidence, she shared how she was really into a guy named Matt in college. He was the only man who paid her any attention, which made her feel validated and sexy, despite not feeling attractive compared to the other women at her college. When he drunk dialed her at 8 a.m., she immediately took the opportunity to show up at his dorm room and have sex with him. I wanted to learn more about this and go to a website that maybe I'm more familiar with. That took me to Vulture. This from Vulture, May 2nd, 2014, when they say, read Amy Schumer's powerful speech about confidence. Okay, they have the transcript there, and let me skim it from Amy's speech. I was getting no male attention, and I'm embarrassed to say it was killing me, but one guy paid me some attention, Matt. Matt was 6 feet tall, and he was 5 years older than me. What, an older boy paying attention to me? I must be okay. I made him laugh in our bio lab, and I could tell a couple times that we had a vibe. He was a super senior, which is a sexy way of saying should have graduated but needed an extra year. Again, I'm skimming here. When I would see him on campus, my heart would race, and I would smile as he passed. I'd look in the mirror and see all the blood rise to my face. I'd spend time analyzing the interaction and planning my outfit for the next time I saw him. I wanted him to call. He never called, but then finally he called. It was 8 a.m. My dorm room phone rang. Amy, what's up? It's Matt. Come over. Holy yes, this is it, I thought. He woke up thinking about me. He realized we were meant to start a life together. Skipping ahead. The door opens. It's Matt, but not really. He's there, but not really. His face is kind of distorted, and his eyes seem like he can't focus on me. He's actually trying to see me from the side like a shark. Hey, he yells too loud and gives me a hug. He's effing wasted. I'm not the first person he thought of that morning. I'm the last person he called that night. I wonder how many girls didn't answer before he got to fat freshman me. Am I in his phone as Schumer? Probably, but I was here, and I wanted to be held and touched and felt desired despite everything. I wanted to be with him. I imagined us on campus together, holding hands, proving, look, I'm lovable, and this cool other guy likes me. She skips ahead, has some very colorful details of what they did in the bed. She eventually says, on his 4th thrust, he gave up and fell asleep on my breast. His head was heavy, and his breath was so sour, I had to turn my head so my eyes didn't water. So you'll find that complete speech on Vulture. Separate from what we just talked about, I do want to share that I am aware back in 2018, and you can find this on People. Amy opened up about being sexually assaulted, quoting Amy in People. I lost my virginity while I was asleep, so in my stand-up I used to talk about, I called it gray area rape, which is my way of bringing this up in my stand-up, trying to make people laugh while they learned. When we hear about rape when we're children, it's about a guy popping out from a bush and this villain. They don't say it's probably going to be a guy who you know very well. In my stand-up, I would say if she's asleep, that's a no. Back to Distractify, they wrote, even still, allegations of joke stealing have run rampant aside Amy's controversial career. That's what first led many women to also dislike Amy. Several of those allegations, however, are about Amy's sketch show, which has a team of writers. In addition, many jokes come from similar premises, so there are often similarities between the jokes and concepts in comedy, which makes joke theft challenging to prove. Regardless of all the reason to hate Amy, there's still enough love for her to warrant a new Netflix special. And that's your comedy news for today.